Hi everybody, massive apology, I have just completely lost the entire video that I've just made for questions 3 and 4. So you can see I've already written my notes, which I did do on the video. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to just run through them with you now. I'm so sorry, it just completely crashed on me. So I'll try and make sense of some of the notes that I have made here. Were they inclined to quiet laughter? So I highlighted quiet in my vocabulary colour because it made me think that this represented the Vietnamese people as being quite humble or reserved, quite quiet and perhaps taken advantage of. Depends how you want to view that from the speaker's perspective. I might just add that taken advantage of. Can't speak up for themselves, maybe. Again, it depends which attitude you want to go for there. So the response to that question 3 was, "Sir, laughter is bitter to the burnt mouth." And the first thing that I did was highlight "sir" because that is repeated here. And I said that, again, depends on how you want to see it, but my first interpretation of that was the repetition was out of frustration, almost as if, like, how dare you ask that question, these people. This is a silly question to ask a people and culture that have been murdered, have been killed. Or you could say that the response is perhaps sad. Are they trying to hold it together in the "sir," or are they just being respectful and sad like "sir, laughter is"? It really does depend, but I've put both interpretations there. And then I highlighted the alliterative use of bitter and burnt. So I put here that it's quite a harsh sound, which kind of indicates that pain, violence. It's quite uncomfortable, those words. And I was saying on the last video that bitter makes me think of, it's like a lemon in your mouth, something that's uncomfortable. It's quite opposite to the face you might pull if you were laughing. So there's pain in that word bitter. And then I used my vocabulary colour and picked out the word mouth. And I was talking about before how that might link to the intention, because this poem is written through the 1960s, where the whole point of counterculture was about speaking out and protesting. There were speeches, there were songs, there were poems. And has she purposely picked this noun and the impact on this noun to represent the fact that their communication has been taken away from them? They can't protest, their voices can no longer be heard. With that culture, they've lost their own voice. Perhaps could be an indication there. Okay, number 4. Did they use bone and ivory, jade and silver for ornament? So I highlighted these in my structure colour and put this as a list. And I was thinking out loud, are they asking this question because it's about what's left behind, almost in a museum, what you find that they say, oh, you know, we found this and it's from this time with these people. So are they looking to find items to represent this lost culture? And I don't know whether that's could be seen as quite an inconsiderate view of trying to find something to represent something that was unnecessarily taken away. Maybe you could say that it's inconsiderate, but that might be me viewing that in quite a harsh way, thinking that the speaker's being inconsiderate. Perhaps they're not. I did indicate here as well that the colours, the bone, the ivory, the jade and the silver, they're quite pale colours, and also quite natural as well. They're natural materials, and does that indicate this less developed culture? But I think the focus when you see 4 is on this choice of the word ornament, because an ornament is something that you have to celebrate with. And you can see from answer 4 here, a dream, perhaps ornament, is for joy. And I think these end stops might reflect this frustration, particularly at this point, which we get 3 of them here, at the end of mouth, at the end of the joy, and the end of charred. So it's quite interesting to note that we've got these 3 end stops. I don't know how I'm going to identify that. Oh, I'd have to draw a line later. I might just acknowledge that later. But let me fill you in on this bit. A dream ago, So we've had all the way through these answers about it's not remembered, perhaps, so they're talking about the past. This one, I don't know whether they've lost their patience here or not, but a dream ago is hyperbole, when you go over the top on purpose. So here, the idea being it was such a long time ago, they can't remember. Perhaps, maybe, and we get this statement, ornament is for joy. And it's within that statement that you can start reading what's being implied or what's not being said. If ornament is for joy and they had it a dream ago, surely the poet or the responder here is saying there's not been happiness for a really long time. They've not had joy in a really long time. So why would I be able to answer that question about ornaments? It's been taken away from them. And I don't know whether it's me that's feeling like there's real anger in this point. There does feel like a real moment of frustration in the responder here, particularly in this really vivid image. So this is where I got up to. All the bones were charred. Again, look at that statement, but I'm going to focus very particularly on this image here. Charred bones. There's a detachment here. All the bones. We're talking about human people. We're talking about humans, and there's an interesting point here where, look at the let me just zoom out. Look at the repetition of bone, and it's not the first time they did it. They did it with stone before. We've had, where is it? There's bone for the ornament. Number 4, there's bones repeated by the responder, but they're not talking about bones for ornaments. They've repeated this word. Repetition is structure. They've repeated this word to show murder, destruction, horror. All the bones were charred. And when you think of charred, that's burnt to a crisp. It's such a vivid and violent image. Which is why I feel like that plays so much more into the anger seeping through here, particularly. I'm finding this really hard to fit in, but I definitely want to acknowledge this point in the poem with all its end stops. I might use my tone colour to do it and just do a end stops anger. Okay. Right, hopefully this video has worked and will not crash on me. The last video will look at the last 2 questions.